Elio is the biggest bomb and the worst Pixar opening ever. Reported budget of, I've heard different. When I hear they report these, but I've heard 150 million, but that's the least. I've heard up to 300.
69. That's what I keep hearing.
Yeah. So we'd have to research it more to find out. But what do you
let's
guys think?
After watching Elio, it makes more sense that it was 150 million than 300 million.
Yeah, it does not look at this global box office. Pixar's Elio craters with 30. Why did they say crater? Is that a reference to?
It's a space reference.
Iran.
It's a space reference.
Outer space reference. With 35 million, 28 Laters awakens to 60 million. So there you go. That's global. There you go. What do we take away from the Elio bomb?
First thing I'm thinking is the Pixar brand pretty much just dead at this point? Like, Pixar used to mean amazing. It's something for everybody. The family can go and, you'll get the kid stuff, but the adults will find a little fun in it as well. I saw Elio and there was absolutely nothing for me there. I just saw it because my audience super chatted me into it. But
yeah, they do that.
That happens. It does happen.
Oh my God.
But it was so drab. It was boring. It was hard to watch. And I was just like, little kids, 8 years old, will love it. But everybody else is just like, there's nothing for me. It's so far from what we got with Finding Nemo and The Incredibles and, Monsters, Inc. and Toy Story, obviously, and all the old Pixar classics from the past. We're not getting anything like that now. And it seems like if they're not doing like Inside Out 2 or Toy Story 5 or whatever they're doing next, it seems like if we're not getting that, Pixar really doesn't have anything left.
Dante, Verbal Riot, thanks for joining us, popping on late. It's all good. Good to see you.
I am here.
Yeah, well, you were up late with Flashcast.
No. I was dog sitting all weekend, so I didn't get a chance to do a whole lot.
Right. I saw you on George's show.
Yeah.
George's show. That's great. So I don't know if you saw either of these movies, but it seems like Pixar, really looking at it, it's only the sequels that do well, right? I mean, Inside Out 2, we have, other things, the sequels do well, original IP not doing well.
But you remember back in the day, like Finding Nemo made like $800 million, like they still had original movies. The Incredibles, I think The Incredibles made like 700 million. You had good movies that would come out, and Pixar was always doing original things. And even if it didn't make a lot of money, it was still interesting. Like I liked Ratatouille, A Bug's Life. It's like they had these different weird worlds. That's like, hey, we're going to go underwater and see what these clownfish are doing. And we're going to write a whole story around it. It was interesting. They no longer do that. It's just like Elio is just I don't know. It's just a disappointment to see Pixar falling this low. They used to be great.
Yeah, I love Pixar films. There was always something special. Even Inside Out 2, I got a little choked up at the end. It always seems like they've got, this emotional tug right at the end where you think, where's this going? And then it pays off. This had none of that. I mean, Alan, you went over it in detail.
But one thing I didn't talk about was excellence was always a word associated with Pixar.
Right.
Brilliance was always associated with Pixar. Being able to connect with people emotionally, that's what you always expected with a Pixar movie. And quite frankly, I don't think that has happened since Coco, ironically, since that was the last film that John Lasseter had his hands on.
Yeah. And I loved Coco. That film, so great about family, the stuff, the music, first of all, amazing in Coco. Second thing is all the Day of the Dead stuff was so great. And then his relationship with his grandmother. I mean, that got me in the end. I mean,
well, then compare that to Up, where in the first 10 minutes you're bawling.
Oh, yeah. Destroyed everyone. Yeah.
Man, that was rough.
And this movie just completely lacked that, even though it had an off-screen death of the title character's parents. It's in the first minute of the movie.
Isn't this movie a victim of a couple of different things? One, it got delayed because of COVID, but what I suspect is the bigger one is this underwent probably a cultural course shift in the narrative and writing once they realized the writing was on the wall, but they might have been too far along to make any substantial changes.
Yeah, I mean, the word I heard was there was a change in directors. So it was started by a director who had done some other ones, replaced by the director of Turning Red, and then they claim that the original director obviously was Hispanic, Latino, and that he was moved on to Coco 2, which scares me now about Coco 2. It you know, I talked about it on some podcasts. I don't know if it was ours, but you know, John Lasseter, what made John Lasseter great is he had the power, he had the veto power.
Yeah.
You know, it was no. You know, if he didn't like it, it didn't get in. And it just doesn't seem like it's there anymore. And if you read the D files, for anyone to say no, especially to a person of color, that's racism.
Yeah.
And so now you have the inmates running the asylum rather than having someone who has experience, has understanding of how animation works, how storytelling works, to kind of guide the process and just put your foot down and say, no, this is not going to work in theaters. We're not putting it in our movie. That's what Disney needs.
Yeah. Well, care to speculate on Elio and the bombing? Is the Pixar brand forever tarnished now? Can Pixar do an original people are interested in, and can they push back against, I'll just say this, the less experienced animators in the room? Can a veteran, you know, or as they're called, a colonizer, can they just say, hey, maybe not this, let's do this. This designed for characters. You know what I mean? Can they push back?
I reference you guys on Film Thread all the time. I think it's one of the Allen articles that one of them is Disney Animation, The Killer of Dreams. And then basically the whole story of once we got Lasseter out and Jennifer Lee took over and influencers started to be hired, and then they could not meet deadlines and they were hired for the wrong reasons. And so now you're seeing all the people that knew what they were doing got pushed out. And now they're very slowly starting. I forgot his name, but there is a veteran in animation. It's an older white guy, spoiler, and he's coming back. And while I see that as very good, that he's coming out of retirement, it means they might actually have learned that like some of our vets knew what they were talking about, the OGs, bring them back. What are they going to do now when they meet these new kids that are still there,
right,
and have never been held accountable to deadlines? And
well, I think it's poor management. It really is leadership. It's you've got to be willing to say no and not be in fear that you'll be called a name. And that's what leadership is. And I think Lasseter, you might not have liked every decision, but look at the track record. Hit after hit after hit. They're making Toy Story 5. You know, you don't make a fifth one. There are not many franchises that have 5, you know, get to number 5. Well, there's a few off the top.
Except for Saw. That has like 12.
Well, Saw was, yeah. If you get past double digits in your franchise, you're doing well. But, I mean, the Star Wars franchise, double digits.
No, I think Pixar, unlike the MCU and unlike Lucasfilm, Pixar has kind of kept a decent name for themselves.
Yeah,
I think this was a big miss for them, probably the biggest miss they've ever had, because I think it was like it opened 3rd, right? Which is no Pixar movie's ever done.
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing, man. You know, Robert Rodriguez said a long time ago that everybody has a bad movie in them. In fact, everybody has about 10 bad movies in them, right?
Yeah.
So it could just be this was their miss, right? They shot, they missed. I'm not taking too much from this at all, just because it is Pixar, and I know they'll bounce back probably like within their next movie, right? What I will say though, what's interesting about this situation with Elo is even mainstream media now is starting to criticize the quality of Disney's work, right?
Yep.
I saw that this morning on Good Day LA, where they're talking about how much Disney's kind of fallen a little bit. And I'm like, so you guys are finally like catching up to what YouTubers have been talking about for the past like 3 years.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, all of a sudden now the mainstream media sees the problem that we saw like years ago, and now they're talking about it.
Yeah. I just it makes me sad because a Pixar movie, like a Star Wars movie, became an event. And now I think the brand is tarnished. I think it's tarnished.
I don't know. I don't know if the brand is tarnished. I think again, as Pixar, I still think they have a better reputation than most studios. I think they could bounce back very easily.
Well, I think with a sequel they can. Toy Story 5, if they do a sequel, Inside Out 3.
But look how they spun off Toy Story and with Lightyear, and that was a bomb. So even their spinoffs may not work out. Elemental legged it out, but it started out bad.
Wasn't really a spin-off because it wasn't Tim Allen. It was, what I'm saying? They took the right idea and then they did all the wrong ingredients for it.
Yeah. You need great creatives, and that's what Pixar, at least in my opinion, used to have. I don't know, maybe they need to get John Lasseter back over there.
They do, and they canceled a movie. Alan talked about that. In hindsight, now there was an Iranian culture Pixar movie that they remember, and it was supposedly super far along. Boy, I'd like to know what that movie was about now.
Well, the thing is this: what remains to be seen. This movie is a failure. It's a loss. That's it. What remains to be seen is, will they learn the lesson? Can they be reflective to go, the team that we elevated were not given the right direction? I do not doubt there are many talented people on that team, right? But they don't have experience. You need to be led by experience. You need to hear, no, this doesn't work. This works. This is better. We've got to regroup. Lasseter famously stopped work on Toy Story and did a page 1 rewrite, remade Toy Story 1. It was a different movie. So I think they need the kind of leadership that can, make the tough decisions.